faaliyetlerimiz İstanbul Tasarım Zirvesi Design Policy oturumuyla devam etmektedir. Oturumumuzun moderatörünü sizlere takdim etmek istiyorum. Creative Industries Styria Genel Müdürü Sayın Eberhard Schrempf'i sahneye davet ediyorum. I would like to invite Managing Director of Creative Industries Styria, Mr. Eberhard Schrempf. Sevgili dostlar, oturum boyunca Design City ve UNESCO City Design hashtag ile Twitter ve Instagram'da paylaşımda bulunabilirsiniz. Dear guests, during the panel, you can share your post by using the Is Design City and UNESCO City of Design hashtag. Şimdi sözü Sayın Eberhard Schrempf'e bırakıyor. Hepinize keyifli bir oturum diliyor. And now, Mr. Schrempf is going to present you to the other speakers.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here in this beautiful town I love so much. So Istanbul has all my love because I'm really addicted to Istanbul, and it's such an honor to have the opportunity and the chance to talk to you on this summit, which is really fascinating when this competent political power is, we saw in the morning session for the opening presentation what design plays, what kind of role design plays in this town. Graz, I'm from the city of Graz, which is a UNESCO City of Design since 2011. Istanbul is UNESCO City of Design since 2017, and we worked a lot together. So it was clear that Istanbul and Graz will cooperate as twin cities in many topics, and one topic is design policy. How to anchor design strategy and design policy in the cities and in the regions. This is what we are talking today, and today we have invited other experts to this talk, not only today, also tomorrow. So we are really working on creating design policies for our cities. This is one of the goals within this panel. And let me step into that. The first day today we are talking about why. Why do we need design policies? What are the benefits on design policy? Why does a region, a city, a nation need that? Why does a city work on the design policy? What can it deliver? What can we expect from this? And this is what we are talking today, and tomorrow we'll talk about the how. How can we implement design in our daily life, in our daily business? And tomorrow we have another 3 speakers here, and today I would love to invite now the 3 speakers on the stage, and then we have each 20 minutes presentation, and then we have a discussion and a reflection on these statements and examples of these 3 different perspectives and views on design policies. So I would love to welcome now Päivi to the stage. Ladies first. And please give a hand to Piotr Swiatek. And finally, Boštjan, Botas, Kenda. Please take your seat. We start We start the presentations with of these three experts with Piotr Swiatek. He's from PDR, the International Center for Design and Research. PDR is a world-leading design consultancy and applied research center located within Cardiff Metropolitan University in Wales, United Kingdom. As a researcher in the design and innovation policy team, Piotr works on projects such as developing design-driven innovation policies and support programs for design. After graduating in finance and accounting from Krakow University of Economics, Piotr completed a master's degree in culture management at Jagiellonian University in Krakow by defining his thesis on design management in Poland, I have learned. He wrote the Polish Design Manifesto, and he worked for Rolls-Royce, Castle Ciecin Design Center, and as a freelancer and design researcher. Give a big hand to Piotr, and he will dive into the first case study. As a researcher, he has also made a big research project, European research project, monitoring and looking to the European design policies and innovation strategies. The stage is yours, Piotr.
Thank
you. You have 20 minutes.
Sure. Hello, everyone. We all know how tricky to define design is. And policy is kind of the same. Policy is whatever government decides to do or not to do. So when you put two together, it's a perfect recipe for a disaster. So I'm going to try to share with you my experience and my lessons in researching design policies. As Eberhard mentioned, my name is Piotr Swiatek. I work at PDR, which was established 25 years ago at Cardiff Metropolitan University as a center for product development and research. But as understanding of design has evolved, we are also evolving. So now we like to call ourselves people design research. We are no longer focusing only on new product development. Can you hear me well? Because I'm moving a lot. But also we use design approach to look at the issues of circularity and sustainability. In our eco-design team, we use design to develop patient-specific implants or develop services. We also have a team of user researchers and a workshop where we test new methods of production. But I work in design policy team, and that's my main field of interest. And I'm going to tell you how we understand design policy. So we look at design policy from two perspectives. And the first one is what we call policy for design. And that means how countries and regions can promote and support design to achieve their development goals. And the second perspective, which we are looking at in our team, is design for policy. So how design methods and tools can be applied in public sector to develop more citizen-centered policies and services. What I'm giving you here, it's quite an academic definition of what design policy is. But effectively, design policy is government efforts to increase the volume and the quality of design activity in a country or a region. And until recently, there haven't been many explicit design policies. The first one, design policy, is believed to be developed in Japan in the late 1950s. But in Europe, it was in Denmark. And they developed their first design policy in 1997. And since the understanding of innovation shifted from being only focused on technology and to include also non-technological drivers of innovation. And we've done research on those policies. We've analyzed 7 of the policies that were available at the time of our research. We looked at what actions are included in them. And among the 7 action plans that we analyzed, they had 165 actions, with them starting from 6 actions in the Irish action plan to as many as 50 in Latvian. If we look at the beneficiaries of those actions, you can see that the actions were mostly targeted at businesses and designers. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it's about 25% of actions, followed by 18% of actions dedicated to education and public sector, and also some actions for design support agencies and general public. How did they plan to implement those ambitions? There were almost even split of 25% between different mechanisms, such as support and funding programs, promotion and awareness campaigns, initiatives in training, education, and research, and also introducing new laws or policies. So we analyze all those 165 actions, and I want to give you some examples of what those actions were. We grouped them in 5 categories. In actions for support and funding, not surprisingly, the most of actions were about implementing new funding schemes, such as innovation vouchers, to help businesses acquire design expertise and work with designers. But we have also seen actions to simplify funding procedures, create capacity in business support organizations so that they can effectively provide advice on design, or even provide technological infrastructure for new product development and prototyping. Among the promotion and awareness actions, there were all sorts of exhibitions, design award schemes to be launched, or even postulates to establish new design centers or design museums. Interestingly, many countries want to market themselves as a design nation, for example, through creating a designed in a specific country brand, or they also want to promote national design products in public institutions at home and abroad. Education and research actions were all about increasing the design literacy among general public. So it includes reviewing the curricula, developing training programs, developing training materials, preparing teachers, both in primary and secondary schools, so that they can teach design effectively to kids. And on the research side, most of action focus on strengthening the quality of design research and making sure the results of research are being used in business and commercialized. When we look at the actions for designers themselves, most of the action focused on increasing the scale and competitiveness of design businesses, because design agencies are usually micro or small companies, and governments want to increase the scale of those activities. Also, there were actions to promote design as a career path. Interestingly, in Irish policy, the promotion focused on more females in design roles. And finally, actions for the public sector and government included advocacy for design as a driver of innovation in regional development strategies, but also in other related policies, such as, for example, circular economy policy. On the other hand, there were many actions to build the capacity among public servants to use design effectively and to be able to procure design services, to be able to buy innovative design for public sector. There were also postulates to include designers in policy teams or establish units such as policy labs to promote user research and experimentation in public sector. How am I doing for time? And based on that all research and analysis, we created design action cards, which are aimed to facilitate the discussion on design policy among design stakeholders. We use those cards in our project that Eberhard mentioned, Design for Innovation, where we work with 7 other European regions to develop regional action plans for design. We also use this method with international audience at recent BEDA Insight Forum in November, but also at the Industry Days last month, to talk about the possible next action plan for European Union. And also in November last year, we organized International Design Policy Roundtable, where we invited policy experts from across Europe, including Päivi from Finland, representing Finland, but also from Ireland, Latvia, Malta, am I forgetting? Denmark, but also from beyond Europe, from Hong Kong, Singapore, and New Zealand. And we were discussing the lessons learned from developing and implementing design policies. And I want to quickly, because I see I'm running out of time, summarize our discussions last November. So the first tip would be to start with analysis of your design ecosystem, to identify all the actors and their needs, to identify strengths and weaknesses of your design ecosystem. We've seen this approach across many policies, including Finnish one, but also most recent, the Latvian policy, also use the ecosystem approach. And this is also about learning from the best practice. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to look for the best practice in design policy and adapt it to your regional context, make it relevant to your local needs. A second tip would be practice what you preach. So make the design policy development process really user-centered. Use co-creation. That's going to create the sense of ownership of the policy among your stakeholders who eventually will be responsible for the implementation. Another issue that we discussed is to align your goals to broader development goals of your country. So you really need to understand what your government is trying to achieve and show them how design can help to achieve those goals. Then hopefully you're going to secure endorsement from the top, from the ministers, and you really need to put effort into promoting case studies of good practice, both in public sector and business. And initiatives such as Year of Irish Design or World Design Capitals are a great opportunity to really engage all the stakeholders and show the real value of design. This is quite technical tip. It's about really defining clear and concise actions, not some wishful thinking or slogans. Okay, I need 1 more minute. It's best if your policy is goes with implementation plan, specific delivery actors, and sources of funding. But you need to be realistic, stay focused, and maybe prioritize smaller number of actions. And finally, still 3 minutes. Finally, design is all about improvement. You need to remember that your design policy may become outdated the day you publish it in this fast-changing world. So you really need to leave implementation open and monitor the situation, react to the changes, be flexible and adaptive. And I think I can't stress enough the importance of data. We are talking about it a lot. You need to both combine qualitative and quantitative data and benchmark your performance against others. So just to quickly recap, engage the whole ecosystem, practice what you preach, promote, align with the bigger picture, make it realistic, and monitor and constantly improve your policy. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. The audience has then in the discussion the chance to reflect on this and step into with some questions. Do that. We do all the 3 presentations and then we do the discussion on this. And I'm happy to announce the next presenter. It's Päivi Tahkokallio from Finland. She's the founder and CEO of Tahkokallio Design Plus, based in Rovaniemi. It's very north, very north in Finland. Päivi, with her track record on strategic and social design, has been called the mother of Arctic design. a design approach to support sustainable development of the Arctic area. And she also has the experience, strong experience to inclusive design. During the last 20 years, Päivi became an international advocate on design for all, creating and leading the Design for All network in Finland and actively participating in the work of the European e-accessibility Design for All network. She is currently, she's currently Vice President and soon the President of the Bureau of European Designers Associations, the BEDA, short named BEDA. And she was, of course, involved in creating the design policy Finland. And Finland is, for me, and for everybody who is deep into design policies, really one of the benchmarks for policy making, for design strategy, implementing design in everyday life. And I'm so happy that you could make happen to come to here, and the stage is yours now, and we are listening to you. Please give a big applause to Päivi. You can use this one.
Yeah, I'm actually, if it's okay to use this, I don't know who can turn.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah,
okay,
it's no problem.
Thank you. I will leave my phone here so I can follow the time. I know Eberhard will do that as well. And I'm leaving my green book here in case I forget everything I wanted to say. So, thank you for inviting me here. It's an honor. Eberhard already presented me, so no more words about me. Actually, what I'm going to talk about is design policy in Finland, the national design policy, but not only the national design policy. I'm also going to talk about a regional design policy and a design policy of a city, the capital of Helsinki, and touching a bit of the design policy approach in my current hometown, which Eberhard already said that is Rovaniemi. Who knows Rovaniemi? Never. Who has heard of? 1, 2. This is the official hometown of Santa Claus, so everyone should know that. Okay, let me see. Yes, here's the map of Europe. Istanbul, where we are now, you can see it on the map. And then, of course, the main character of this talk, Finland, the capital of Helsinki, on the very south coast of the country, and Rovaniemi, my small hometown, exactly at the Arctic Circle. So I do come from very north, and the region I'm going to talk about is the region of Lapland, of which Rovaniemi is the capital. So I'm trying to cover 3 layers of design policies: national, regional, and a city. Key developments in Finland. It was already mentioned that Finland has had design policies for quite a while. The latest is from 2013, as Piotr was already saying, but this was not the first one. Here's a timeline for design policy in Finland. The first national design policy came into being in 2005. It was typically a 5-year design policy. We called it Design 2005. It ran from 2005 till 2010. At the same time, what came into being in Finland was Helsinki Design Week, and we all know that platforms like Design Weeks or Design Months are effective tools to implement what happens in design policies as well. So they serve a purpose as platforms as well. Then a few years later, in 2007, Sitra, which is a think tank in Finland, a 50-year-old think tank, founded by the government in 1968 to act as a tool for innovation, creating innovation, doing research on the future of the country, etc. Sitra also decided to go into design, and they established Helsinki Design Lab, which was a think tank around design for a few years. After that, 2010, roughly, was the time when Helsinki decided to apply for the World Design Capital status. We got it, or Helsinki got it, and the year kicked off in 2012. Aalto University, very important step in what has happened in Finland design-wise, took place at that year as well. Aalto University is a merge of 3 universities. What we used to have in Finland and in Helsinki was the University of Art and Design, but that merged with Helsinki University of Technology and with Helsinki School of Economics, a university-level educational institution on economics. And this merge was done because in Finland we believed that design cannot live alone, neither can technology, neither can economics. So we have to put all these 3 universities together to activate interaction between these 3 different types of universities. And of course, this follows what we say in Europe currently as well, that overlapping, not overlapping, but cross-disciplinary approach is what creates innovation. It's not a single approach, but we need cross-fertilization, cross-disciplinary innovations. At the time, also, social and healthcare renewal in Finland really got started in a serious way. Design was included in that process, but this is also something we can say is not a success, because even today, after almost a 15-year process, what has happened in Finland that in reality to redesign the total social and healthcare system is almost impossible. It becomes a political issue, or it is from the starting point a political issue, and when you have already created in history a very complex, multi-layered system of social and healthcare structures, renew that completely, almost impossible. So we are still in the middle of this almost impossible, but still we hope that bringing design into the process will get us out of the loop one day. Now, 2013, the second national 5-year design policy program came into being. The name of it is Muotoile Suomi, Design Finland, what has happened with that is that we have, about a year ago, had a midterm evaluation of this second design program. What I can only say now, from the point of view of how has design policy developed in Finland from starting 2005 till today. The first policy program in 2005, it had a clear focus on bringing design into the businesses. Big companies, small companies, with a focus on SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And we know from all over Europe that SMEs, the small companies, smaller companies, they are the problem. The big companies are not the problem. They can invest in design. In many countries, they invest in design. But small companies, which are in most countries more than 90% of the number of the enterprises, they are the problem. So the focus was put in private sector companies. How can we bring and support bringing design into companies? What we did basically in 2005 was that 20 million euros was put into an R&D program which supported this structure, which was all about, through research, through development, through innovation boosting, to encourage companies, businesses to use design. And it was quite a success. And then the new national design policy program, we are still on the way, more than halfway. The focus shifted. There was an emphasis again to bringing design into businesses because we didn't 100% succeed in 2005 or between 2005 and 2010. But you can see a clear shift in the policy. And this is a consequence of a lot of changes in design world, in European economy, in Finnish economy, lots of factors which has created or supported the change. And the biggest change with the second policy program is the growth in use of design in public sector. This is something that has happened very strongly during the past few years, even in Finland. Public sector is learning, has learned, is willing to use design to develop strategies, to develop services, to develop everything. So if I would say this in one sentence, 2005 focus on private sector, 2013 more focus on public sector. But this is not something that was that much planned to happen. It has happened because the world has changed. And the demand for design services in public sector is growing because the public sector in Finland, in other countries as well, recognizes that they need to change. Societies have changed, economies have changed. How do you create a positive change? Public sector is learning that using design is helping. So there's value in design. The value in design for businesses, for companies, comes often from the economical value. The value for design in public sector comes also from economical value, but there's always a societal value in public sector design and public sector planning as well. So this is what is happening with us currently. So enough of the country. Now to Helsinki, the capital. What I should perhaps have said earlier already, if you compare Helsinki and Istanbul, it's like other planets. Istanbul, we have heard today, is 18 to 20, depends on how you count, million people. It's 1/4, maybe, roughly speaking at least, of the Turkish economy, etc., etc. What happened, and the share of GDP in Turkey is huge. What happens in Finland is that Finland as a country is 5.5 million. So we could put 3 Finlands into Istanbul. Our capital, Helsinki, is 550,000 people. So you can imagine the scale of things is totally different with us. We need to put all Scandinavian countries, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark and Iceland together, and we get the population of Istanbul. So you can imagine when we talk about design policies, we talk about different issues as well. But what Helsinki has done as a capital is here. So a lot has happened design-wise in Helsinki before the time period we are talking about now. Basically, I'm talking about the last, let's say, 20 years. But there's a boost in what has happened in Helsinki. And I think this boost happens in very many cities, in very many countries for different reasons and at different times. But what created a boost in Helsinki, design-wise, design policy-wise, was the World Design Capital. I still remember very clearly when we were expecting that year to happen. It was coming. And we were, many of us in Finland, in design community, in other communities, in other fields, I think we were quite doubtful whether that will really pay off in relation to the huge investments that it meant. It meant millions of euros invested in the year. But afterwards, it's very easy to say that it really paid off. It changed the year itself. It was a set of events. And that's not the core thing. But what it changed is it changed the approach to design. It changed understanding, awareness in relation to design. And it created, in the city of Helsinki, it created an ambition in relation to design. They wanted to become the model city of design. And this, of course, is something that's already embedded in the Finnish DNA. I will come back to that, and if I don't remember, ask me what Finnish design DNA means. But what has happened since 2012, the design capital year, is that design in the city of Helsinki has meant supporting startup companies through design. It has meant bringing design education to primary level education. It has meant bringing design into different departments of the city administration. It has meant bringing design into processes of housing planning, social and healthcare system, educational system, cultural sector. It's a horizontal structure that goes through everything the city of Helsinki nowadays does. What this also meant is maybe the first time in the world even, that in 2016 or 2015, the city of Helsinki hired a chief design officer. The first to do that in the world. And that of course meant that within the city administration, Helsinki had a high-level professional who worked directly with the mayor and who had a team whose task it was to infiltrate design into different departments. But maybe one of the major things Helsinki is doing currently is design education. That design education is brought into primary level, from kindergarten level through the school system. And this, I think, is something where Helsinki sees the value of future. If you want to keep going, as design-wise, as Helsinki is doing now, you have to make sure that the children growing up know at least as much about design as the design community knows now. So this is educating future understanding of design and seeing design as a strategic tool. Okay, so this is Helsinki. And my home region, Lapland. I used to live in Helsinki for 35 years. 10 years ago, I moved up north, and today, and for the rest of my life, I suspect I am an advocate of the Arctic region. I see the value in Arctic region. Okay, 4 minutes. Okay, I can do Lapland in 4 minutes. So Lapland is, you can see the size of Lapland. Finland is, the country is huge. I think we are the third largest country in Europe. We have a population of 5.5 million. Lapland, my home region, most of it north of the Arctic Circle, is the same size as England. England has some 50 million people, Lapland 180,000. Density of population, 1 person per square kilometer. This is where I live. Rovaniemi, the capital, lying straight at this Arctic Circle, has 60,000 people. And of course the density there is a bit larger, which means that there are places in Lapland where the density of population is 1 person per 10 or 100 square kilometers. So a lot of space, very few people. But I have to say, what we are very proud of in Lapland is that what we have is the same infrastructure as the rest of the country. The Arctic region, you know, the whole huge Arctic region, north of Russia, Canada, United States, all Scandinavian countries, most of Arctic is without infrastructure. But the infrastructure in our part of the Arctic is the same as in the rest of the country. And this is what has happened design-wise, design policy-wise in Lapland and in the city of Rovaniemi. I will not go into the details. I'm sure you can read them as you listen to me speaking, but what is important is that the reason why there is a design policy in Lapland is because we see the value of design in developing our living conditions, but not only ours, because we know that we depend on a lot of other things. And living in a region like the Arctic, you know that you depend on nature, we depend on climate change, we depend on what happens in the whole Arctic region. So we have to create a design policy that tries to support not only our development, but the development of the whole Arctic region. And doing this, if we would succeed in this for a very tiny part, it would help the rest of the world, because we all know now that what happens in the Arctic, let's say climate-wise, climate change-wise, it has a double effect in the Arctic, and the double effect has an effect on what happens in the rest of the world, like cities like Istanbul as well. So we try to, when we try to think ourselves, we also try to think the rest of the world. Okay, time is out, except let me again still say the last word, sort of the conclusion. Why Finland has in many ways succeeded in design policy? We have to go back in history. Finland is a democracy. Finland is a Nordic welfare state, which is based on the idea that education is free on everyone, free access to education, free equality between genders, equality in social classes. Equality is the key word. And designers, design professionals in Finland have always supported creation of Finnish welfare society with concrete actions. It used to be product design. The key issue was access to well-designed products for everyone, not only the wealthy ones. And this has changed. What has happened is that this idea, equality, access to everyone, is now shifting towards services. It means services for all. And you know, even today, when I go to my closest supermarket, I can buy the best design products in Finland. Because this is the idea that you get best design next door, not going somewhere, you know, a fancy shop. So this is the leading principle, which means that we are doing what we are doing. So, I say thank you.
Thank you, Päivi. We will have time to go into that later, but now let me introduce our third speaker today. It's Boštjan Botas, Kenda. He is a graphic designer and professor at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design on the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. Botas is also Vice-Rector. It's a big honor to have a Vice-Rector for art and creativity here on this stage. He graduated in editorial graphics at Istituto Europeo di Design in Milano, Italia. Now he teaches visual communication at the several higher education programs. He is the founder and partner of Studio Botas, founded in 1991, a graphic design studio which concentrates on lettering and visual design. He leads the expert group of the Slovenian state design strategy. It started in 2016, worked until 2017. Then it stuck a little bit, but maybe he will talk about this. And it's a good example having one of these states here. They are so let's say in the process, or in the development process of the design strategy, because we can learn a lot from you, from this 15 years experience of Finland maybe, and from all the others. So please give a hand to Botas. Welcome here.
Introduce me. I'm really happy to be part of the Istanbul Design Summit these days, and it's really great that design and I'm really pleased that I'm part of this wonderful event here, and to be part also of the development of the modern society. So I would like to, with this presentation, describe how it's my experience with the preparation of national design strategy, which is in process, but maybe it's a couple of months ago, before I reached the phone call from Eberhard that he invited me to this summit about design policy. The paper, all the processes about design policy in Slovenia was freezing. But nowadays I think that also this event can warm it and to push it further. So I would like to say that, do you know where Slovenia is? I mean, if we talk a little bit geographically, as my colleague told before, it's northern part of ex-Yugoslavia country. So it's between Mediterranean Sea and Alps, tiny country with 2 million inhabitants. So Ljubljana, it's 300,000 inhabitants capital. So we are between different cultures, different positions, and it's now I think that it's necessary to understand it as a form of communication. So in the middle of 2016, I was asked to from the Ministry of Culture of Republic of Slovenia to guide the formation of draft document for a national design strategy. And until September, they needed to officially confirm it as a setup of my commission, and then we started. But we have just a really tiny time to start to create, to set up, because they want to. We finish it before Christmas. So It was some kind of Christmas gift to government, and we name it Design for Development. So this is something which is, excuse me, I put okay, yeah. So why? I'm part of the. Thank you to Eberhard, and I'm part of this chapter. Why this design strategies is needed. So the governments and companies are increasingly facing questions that can be answered by improving the efficiency of past known solutions. It's some kind of premise. They are increasingly facing questions on uncertainty where solutions can be adopted rather than need to be designed. Whether it's about addressing new issues such as climate changes or responding to the needs of changed context as a tourism industry, the questions they face are increasingly designed challenges. Yeah. For governments and companies to be competitive, they need to improve the capability to design and deliver better solutions. It's the same like a premise. This might mean that use of design as a method for policy and service innovation or design as a method to better manage risks and uncertainties by prototyping ideas before going to market or defining policy. So this was like a general forum or why the design strategies is needed. But as a specific, and Slovenian nation design strategy, due to unplanned changes in society, the drawing up of the national strategy of design is obviously a priority. This necessity has been clearly started and planned with the National Program of Culture, issued by Government of Republic of Slovenia. I wish to point out that the strategy document needs not only to build up a vision based on confirmation of past and present facts, but also needs to be flexible enough to adapt to developments in the design field and its natural growth. This draft outlines the primary proposal for developing as a Slovenian design strategy in support of Slovenian well-being. This starts by asking 3 questions that relate to the current and future well-being of Slovenia. What are Slovenia's big strategic questions? Where are the opportunities to build a better Slovenia? How do we build a design strategy that helps translate those opportunities into reality? I build a team. I invite 8 with me, of course, 8 experts. I don't want to list as names, but mostly as professions. So among 9 experts was 4 women. Sasha is a graphic designer, graduated in Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Ljubljana, and then also in Aalto University in Helsinki. Miha Klina runs the design management policy in our country, and this designer is also professor of industrial design and design management in Academy of Fine Arts in University of Ljubljana. And there are two ladies, one from Ministry of Culture, the other from Ministry of Economics, Development and Technology of Republic of Slovenia. And then Marko Steinberg, also CITRA member and founder of and CEO of Snowcon and High Stack of Helsinki. And Karel Stoker, which is also here, one of the speakers. He's leading now the panel in other room from historian, professor of FH Joanneum in Graz. And then, do you know that Ljubljana is a capital city of literature in UNESCO structure, is also one of the oldest biennial of industrial design in Europe, and it's called BIO. And Maya is art historian, and she coordinated the BIO. Vasya is a service designer, also studied in Helsinki, in IAO. So we try to create the. I try to create the experts of this field, and open it to the government, and to create the possibility to understand the practice directly into this management of policy, design policy. Yeah. So involved in the process was some kind of ambition and opportunity. We make the slaloming between grapes, and all these grapes, when can become a berry, we started to push it on. So we focused on very specific forum, not to leave it as an specialized. So what can the designers do in that kind of position? So that's very important to understand. Not just to create a beautiful text or some kind of bunch of lists of sheets of paper, but to open the possibility to call for action, to create the platform to be installed. Understand the design processes in the future, and creating as a approach to a strategy that is government driven. So it's not the act that designers will be happy and to be involved and to have the jobs, but that's important to push it further through the government, and all the responsibility. It's not part of the profession, but it's part of design profession, but it's part of the whole structure of the politicians and leaders. That's why I think it's necessary. So if we are here with mostly focused on why, I will like to explain a little bit the key guidelines for the draft document. So prepare the strategy that will generate change. Initiate concrete actions from which new projects can be developed independently. Emphasize the promotion of cross-sectional integration, cooperation, and reciprocity. Integrate design as an active response to social change. Draft the strategy and open it to the public. Make it transparent and accessible to different target groups. That was the mainly goals of that. So now I know that this is the chapter for tomorrow, but how is document structured? It's somehow important. I will just go to few slides, just very quick, just to understand the idea. So the first part was a starting point and changes, so description of the circumstances. The pilot project will be the second part. It's a good practice examples. So that we were sure that, so we take the method of double diamond and make it discover. So with the initial point, we make the discover, define, develop, and deliver. But in this crossroads, we took 3 objectives, 9 actions through these 3 objectives, and 3 pilot projects. Focusing on these 3 important objects, we took the research of the projects in public sector, education, and economy. So we started directly to the veins. So understand it quite well. Yeah. All these 3 objectives have his 3 separate chapters. So we created the 9 different projects and created and put it in the proposal for practice and implement it. So thanks for the invitation here in Istanbul. I asked the Ministry of Culture, which is responsible for this project, what's going on, because we finished it 2 years ago. So what can we do? What's the? It's still vivid, or it's forgotten in some closet, I don't know where. Yeah, thank you. So the original project timeline was based like that. So finished with the 2017 with this preparation of the draft, and then start with the alpha phase, compared with the beta phase, which can be more effective through the implement of live phase. So that was the proposal of draft. But we tweaking this last couple of weeks the existing project timeline to make the pre-phase and to put it, if it's possible, to create it more than just this. So the pre-phase is interdisciplinarily coordination between the sectors of government, and open it to the alpha phase for the existing projects, and then to the 2021 starting with the implementation of strategic plan. That's all. I took this picture in front of the ministry maybe a couple of weeks ago. It was freezing. I think it's really great because snow and the position of the design strategy draft is like that. But you know, the fence are open, and I think that we are here. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please take a seat. With some minutes left now for reflection on the presentations, I also invite Severin Filek, or welcome Severin Filek here in the panel. He will speak tomorrow about the how. We will speak tomorrow, as well as with Mr. Luis Gonzalez Arenal from Puebla. Also welcome, also the city of Wuhan is here with a representative. So a lot of design cities have different experiences, as you see on the example of these 3 cities here. It's completely different here. Piotr took us to try to give us this wider view on design policies and the understanding of the different. They really invented a very, very good method, I think, on inventing the design wheel, the policy wheel, new, or use this as a tool. And I want to go on this first, or reflect on this first, with the question of the duration of the life cycle, you know, on a design policy. Do you have any suggestions, or do you know how long should a policy period, you know, go until, or plan until you should renew the policy or evaluate the policy? We have the example of Finland, which has already 2 periods and reinvents its policy always again. Do you have any recommendation for that?
Is the microphone working?
I think so, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, in the design policies that we looked at, we've seen that they are all between 2 to 5 years perspective, but in discussions and in our lessons learned, we often hear that it's necessary to make kind of live design policies to react to the changes and constantly adapt, because as we've seen in Finland, as Päivi said, as well, for example, in Singapore, they went through 3 phases of design policy, and the design policy evolved with the evolution kind of design. The first policy was focused on brand and branding. The second one was focused on supporting businesses, as the first one in Finland, and the most current one, which is looking into 2025, is really focusing on building community and making design a core competency of the nation. So for the life cycle, I would say not to go too far, because of those changes that are happening, and constantly looking at what's happening around in the ecosystem.
I think Päivi wants to state on this.
Yeah, if I may, indeed, because what started me thinking after my presentation, my own presentation, was that the current design policy in Finland started 2013. And what has happened in Europe or in the world after 2013? If I try to remember the 29 objectives in the current design policy of Finland, there's very little mentioning of climate change or the big changes that have already taken place after 2013. So if I was to create a design policy now for whether it's a city or a region or a nation, my thinking would be that it has to be made so flexible that when these big changes, like we've seen in the past few years only in Europe and the rest of the world, take place, the policy can react. So what it would need is that in design policies you include this factor of change and this willingness to quickly react to changes, whatever the changes might be.
Yeah. One thing is to really develop the policy. The second thing is to communicate the policy, to disseminate it into different parts, whether in the education system, in the healthcare, and the tech, in the digital, and that's not easy to get there, and it takes some time. So the flexibility and the freshness of this policy, that's very important. So
yeah, maybe just some words. I think that obvious the design strategy document, it's not a brochure of 24 pages, or I don't know how much.
Yeah.
It's some kind of vivid organism who maybe have this kind of in DNA, this kind of removing structure and everything which is part of that. So the society leads this, and I think that designers are mostly part of that, and here the delicate part of our society, and to push it further. That's the way. Thank you.
That's the way, and this is one of these aspects that combines and unifies all these policy topics and themes, and why we need a policy. Is this one question, to keep it short and simple as much as we can, and effectful and wide as we can.
Yes, if I can build on that, what was said before, I want to say that just having a design policy doesn't make you good. So there's no point in having design policy for its sake. It's about really understanding what the needs are and what you can achieve with design to help push well-being and competitiveness in your country.
Yeah. For example, I'm coming to the public round, and for example, you mentioned Singapore before, and Singapore has a legacy, a history of 50 years, 51 or 52 now. Finland has a history as a nation about 100 years, or 101 year now, maybe 101 year exactly. They celebrated 100 years of as the nation of Finland last year. You mentioned that in your opening statement, and such countries like Austria, which has a huge legacy, and it was a big European player, shrunk to a little state with about 9 million inhabitants. But Istanbul and Turkey always has been huge, with such a legacy in the background. And this is what interferes and, of course, affects the legacy and the design strategy at the end. And we have to think about this. So, for example, Finland always was occupied. So not the buildings, not
during the last 100 years.
No, not during the last. Most of the time they were occupied. So they invented other things, design. They had another view on design. All the goods they could carry away, they were designing them in a completely different way than the design approach in the south of Europe. It's completely different. And so, of course, design legacy and design policy has to interact. Let's ask the audience if there are some comments and statements. We will start here and then there. Please stand up, say your name and who you are, and what your profession. Please.
My question will be Madame Pavli. My name is Nurettin Cengiz. I'm a businessman, at the same time PhD candidate. I'm mostly organizing R&D center and design center in these days for film makers also. Congratulations, you create good job in your home. I wonder, I think one of the key instrument is independency when you establish your strategy and study. I wonder how you will succeed to stopping influence of politician to your work. Thank you.
Well, this is a big question, certainly. How can we stop, or how do we stop influence of policies or politics? Politicians to, oh yes, exactly, politicians to the work we do. We don't. Simply. I don't think it's even possible. Because this is the nature of politics. If you think about a country or a city, what is the structure? The structure is that there's the political level, and in the political level, certain decisions can only be made by the political level. And then comes the administration level, but the roles are different. So I say that you don't, you can't. But what happens after that is that the only thing in my mind you can try to do is to create a relationship, which is a long-term relationship, and when the politicians change and the political approach might radically change, if you, in the meantime, if you have managed to root, we call it design thinking. If you have managed to root design thinking in the administration level, if we talk about public sector, because the administration does not change, then there's a possibility that the work continues. But then, of course, you also have to accept that sometimes when you take 2 steps forward, sometimes you take 5 steps backwards. You have to be persistent. Don't give up.
There was one question from the lady on the right side in the 4th row, and then the gentleman next to her. Please.
Thank you very much for the wonderful speeches. My name is Gökçe Dervişoğlu, and I'm a strategic management scholar focusing on creative industries. My main question would be, how should we link design policy to culture policy? Because in Turkey we have experienced 2010 European Cultural Capital, which might correspond to the design city experience, but we don't have a creative industries policy unless we have some support of development agencies. So how can we really link that kind of content generation with that kind of processing that design thinking and design policies are offering? And do you have a personal experience, especially I know German-speaking Europe, that it is very much emphasized. So if you have any kind of personal experience for linking that thing, like as you mentioned, Minister of Culture has commissioned it. So how can we really make use of the already generated content? Thank you very much.
Who wants to answer that? I can give you also an answer.
Yeah, okay.
For my country in Austria and in the German-speaking culture, it is really, we are really divide or separate the culture and the arts part from the creative industries part. Why? Because in the subsidies tradition and in the tradition of these countries, the funding of project of arts and culture projects always was a national task. So there are funds, national funds, supporting arts and culture projects and not design projects, not economic projects. So this was a clear separation from it. Of course, it's all culture and it has to do with our identities, and it's we are talking about in Europe and the European Union, we are talking about the whole fields of culture and creative sector, of course, but it depends, I think, on subcultural views on how the fundings and how a national, how the nation is dealing with that. In our spheres, in this older German-speaking area, German, Switzerland, Austria, we separate culture and arts because of the funding from all the businesses, and the design is related to absolutely clearly to the business.
Yeah, maybe, of course, the experience in Czechia, in Slovenia, it's quite the same. They are, from the Ministry of Culture, they are threatened, they are very negative orientated to the terminology of creative industries. That means, industries, that means something which is not part of the culture. It's something which, so I think that it's completely wrong, but if I just want to note that, as you said, that you have the opportunity maybe now to create this kind of integration of creative industries and culture, which is part of it. I mean, also the Eberhard is completely agree that it's not other planet. It's not. We are in the same row. So it thinks that it's a really great opportunity if you grab and to go further with merging this structure. Okay, thank you.
If I can add something from experience of our research. We've seen that most of the current design policies are driven by ministries responsible for economy and jobs and innovations. I think there is more focus on driving competitiveness or innovativeness of the companies. But also there are some good examples, like the Latvian policy, which has been developed in a collaboration between the Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Economy. And it's also seen on your panel, there are representatives of both. So I think it's important to bring both perspectives.
I can say from Finland that both these 5-year design policies have been developed in collaboration between Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Economics. So this has been the starting point in Finland. But I also have to say that it's not always easy. Mostly it's difficult, it's a challenge, because in Finland still, as well as in many other countries, ministries are sectoral ministries, and real integration and collaboration between ministries is quite challenging. I just want to add something from the European level. What happens at the moment in Europe is that the European Commission has established a working group to develop to develop a closer connection between creative industries and the so-called traditional industries. There's two motivations there. The first reason is that the Commission wants to see how creative industries as such could bring a competitive edge to the traditional industries. And of course the second reason is to develop creative industries as such. But this is a recent development that there's a need to bring these closer.
If we talk about Industries 4.0, this is clear, this is a clear strategy to go back, do these crazy guys who invent and create in their garages crazy things and bridge it to the so-called big industries, because there's this industrial revolution going on now, right now, bringing back a lot of things back to Europe which were lost, and there's with all the technologies, no need anymore to produce in the way we did it in the last century. I would go to the last round. We have 2 questions, and then after these 2 questions, we go for 1 round from all the speakers with the answer, why design policy, what can it solve, and what is the benefit to have a design policy. Luis is then the beginner. Think about the asked question is why design policy. Please.
Thank you. This is Tolga Korju. I work for the Turkish National Commission for UNESCO as the Assistant Secretary General. I actually have 2 questions, one for all of you and second specifically for the Päivi. The first question is, when it comes to design policy, do you think there should be an institution that lead in the way for the process? Or is it always better to keep a group of people formed by, the institutions related to the process itself? I mean, the NGOs, the academy, the private institutions, the public sector. What do you think about that?
This is the question we answer tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. The second question is, Päivi, tervetuloa Istanbulin. I'm really glad that you're here now. I spent 6 months at the University of Lapland in Rovaniemi, so I'm glad you brought a wider framework of what's been going on in the Arctic area. When it comes to Arctic Design Week, I know that the next one will be in 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. When you talk about this Arctic Design Week, it sounds just a bit of regional. And how do you see its global impacts in the international area? Is that something you aim to achieve for, or the way it is regional is much more matter baby? And do you also involve the Sami people into this process as well? I know that they are the only indigenous people in the European Union, as I believe, if that's true. And how do you keep them involved? How do you keep them integrated in the process of keeping a design policy in the Arctic area? Thank you.
Shall I answer the question first?
Yeah.
I'll answer the question you asked only from me first. Arctic design is a concept which is basically a design concept to support sustainable development of the whole Arctic region. So it's not limited to Lapland or to Finland. But of course, developing a concept like that, it's a strategy process and it's a step-by-step process. So you have to start from somewhere, and we have started from the Finnish Lapland and slowly widening the concept to other countries as well through certain means, which I can describe to you later if we get to talking by the 2 of us as well. Whether Arctic design is only limited to the Arctic, certainly not, especially in the context of what has happened during the past years. The global interest in the Arctic is growing, has grown rapidly because of climate change and the impact in the Arctic, because of the economical grown value, gas resources, oil resources in the Arctic, and climate change has the impact of opening up the major transportation route of Northeast Passage. So this means that the Arctic issue is a global issue out of necessity. So Arctic design therefore becomes a much wider concept as well. Now I'm forgetting what else you asked.
Thank you.
But I think this is...
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, indigenous people. Yes, we are short. It's a necessity. You can't work in the Arctic without collaborating with indigenous people.
And I would go back to this first question very quick, because we are running out of time. Of course, inclusion is the best way, I think, bringing in as many different approaches and views of experts, expertise as you can. This gives also the policy the chance to better dissemination at the end. Of course, that you can do it also in the other way then, but then you have to run a different promotion of bringing the communicating the design policy in another way. But we will talk tomorrow about this topic. There was one question left. Please, very short.
Hello.
I know.
Hi. My name is Doğan Arslan. I teach at the Istanbul Medeniyet University, and we teach art and design. And what we teach is sometimes doesn't work with the outside of the university, because all those design policy, the government or the politicians, they implement. So, so this is the fact. But design policy is important. As far as I know, in Turkey we don't have such a design policy. As far as I know, maybe there is, but I don't know. I have the question for Päivi that if you have this in your country design policy, but if you have this country, the big city, big country with big population, what it would be your approach in terms of geographic situation, a big population? You just mentioned about the flexibility, which is, I think, I like that. What else that your approach would be for a big city when we want to do this design policy in Turkey? The second question is for Piotr.
There's only one question for you.
And it's related with that. And you said that design policy, you have background from the Poland, and then you work in Wales. So from different two countries, is design policy should be international, national rules in that design policy, like local and international? Or should it apply to all the, one rule that apply to the whole countries? In terms of like human rights is human rights. Design policy it should work in an international way, or there are some rules that should apply to the national too? This is the question.
Thank you.
Well, it's very important that your policy is relevant to your local context, and there are some principles that you can adopt from other countries. As I think I also said, that there is no need to reinvent the wheel. If there is a good business support program for design in Finland, just adopt it in your country. So, but also what I want to say, everyone is looking up to the UK in terms of art and design, and UK actually doesn't have design policy. So the first question you need to ask, do you need design policy? Because what we say in the UK, it's stakeholder-led design policy, design strategy, because the sector is so active and so flexible that basically designers are pushing design agenda, and there is no need to have a political document. But I guess if you have that document, it can unite your stakeholders and push them together to do something to make design activity better in your country.
This was also the answer for the question I had for the final round.
Yeah, I try to be short. Flexibility, as you said, that's certainly one thing. The other thing for me would be that you understand the ecosystem. You understand the ecosystem of actors. And if you decide to go for a design policy, you include the parties in the ecosystem. An inclusive approach, from my point of view, in my experience, always works better than, let's say, a top-down approach. So inclusive approach, and then find the priorities. Istanbul is a huge city, a complex city. You couldn't solve all challenges through design you have at once. So prioritize. Define the ecosystem, involve everyone, and then prioritize.
Thank you. This was also the answer of the last question. So we start with the last question with Luis Gonzalez. Luis is one sentence. Why design policy? Why design policy? One sentence.
More than a policy, it should be in a strategy. I think it's in a strategy more than a policy. It doesn't really have to be like a public manifest, and it's a wonderful excuse to get everybody together to work for something. I think it gives it, if you talk about it, it gives it visibility, and visibility is very important for our sector.
Yeah, thank you. So we were talking about with Luis and Severin Filek from Design Austria Association tomorrow. In one sentence, why design policy?
In one sentence, I give you a short answer. It is necessary.
Give him a voice, please.
You hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon. I give you a simple answer to that. I think it's necessary to have one, because as Päivi said already, on the political level, the level below is the administrative one, and they always want and need something to grab to. And if something is written down, it's very necessary to have it.
Yeah,
Botas.
yeah, thank you. Design strategies, design policies are not made for the designers. It's for everyone. So can we go further? I think it's necessary. Thank you.
You already answered the question.
Okay. If a country, a region, a city wants to perform better, wants to create a better life to its inhabitants, then design just happens to be a very effective tool to make that happen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This was the first session. We have tomorrow at 10, starting the second part, questioning the how to get to a design policy with different experiences from different experts talking to that. And we have more time tomorrow to talk with the audience, and then we have all six speakers on the stage and discuss how can we develop maybe for Istanbul or any other city design strategy and action plan for the future. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.
Değerli misafirler, oturum başkanımız ve konuşmacılarımıza paylaştıkları bilgiler için teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank our guest speaker for their detailed explanation. We really appreciate it. Saygıdeğer konuklar, programımıza kısa bir ara veriyoruz. Saat 16'da Design and Innovation oturumuyla devam edeceğiz.